close this tab about Burke the crocodile. Waiting, setting up a webinar, sipping coffee. Ha! Setting up. It's live. Mute that tab. Dunzo. Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. I hope you all have had a good week. My week's been pretty good. I'm going to share a little bit about why. I'm going to fix my eyebrows, as you saw me do. This you have to do this more as you get older. Here's an interesting fun fact. I don't have to tweeze this part of my face as much, the middle between the eyebrows, but I really have to work these caterpillars. So interesting. When you're young, you got to tweeze the center more. When you're old, you got to clip the top more. Growing old is fun. Okay, so let's see. This week, it's been a good couple of weeks, and one of the things I want to attribute that to is that I've been really practicing a lot of integrity this week. Integrity is a word that we tend to use really as like a normative kind of value-based judgment. Like that person has integrity. That person doesn't. And what we really mean when we say that is that person's good and that person's a piece of garbage. And that's not what I mean by integrity. That's not the way I use that word. And it's not the way I invite you to use it. By integrity, what we mean is that we're aligned in our thoughts, words, and actions. I say what I think and I do what I say. And what this does is it gives access to our power. And the easiest way to think of this is like in karate, when you throw a punch, the more you're lined up, the more your elbow is lined up with your wrist is lined up with your fist, your shoulder, all of that, the more strength you can put behind it. Whereas if you're out of alignment, then you have less strength available. And so the way I've been practicing a lot of integrity this week is really super simple. It's putting stuff in my calendar and honoring it. And generally, when I put something in my calendar, I'm pretty reliable for it. Like if I have an appointment in my calendar, I'm going to be at that appointment. Very reliable that way, especially when there's someone else involved. But there's a lot of stuff, especially as an entrepreneur, that's really, really easy to step over. E.g., if I have something in my calendar that says work on creating speaking clients or do some client creation practice or go through all your emails or record a podcast, those are all things that are really easy to push off. And the cost of pushing them off in the moment occurs pretty minimally. It's like, oh yeah, I'll have to work a little harder tomorrow, but today I can play video games and be like a teenager and just eat chocolate. That's the tangible, obvious cost in the foreground. But in the background, there's another cost, and that is that it's a hit to my integrity. What I said I was going to do is out of alignment with what I actually did. And every time we say we're going to do something, even if it's solely to ourselves, every time we say we're going to, you can see Grimby if you're on camera. Look, Grimby's really wanting to get in this office, but there's a cajon blocking him. I'm sorry, Grimby, not today. Every time we say we're going to do something and then we don't, that creates a subtle internal impact. And the impact is that we lose a bit of our own sense of power. We stop trusting our word. Our word carries less weight with it. And that has a whole host of small knock-on effects. Like we stop, if I'm not going to do that, then maybe, I'm not going to do that other thing that I said I was going to do. And maybe actually I will miss this appointment and maybe I'll reschedule it in. So like one, we slowly fall out of power with our own word. And two, we, at least for me, I start to feel worse about myself. I get frustrated. There's like this sense of like, ugh, I said I was going to do that and I didn't. And then I create a bunch of stories around it. I'm lazy. I'm unreliable. I can't get myself to do stuff. All of these stories start to take up space in my head. And so in my last couple of weeks, my practice has really been to really honor what goes in my calendar, to just really make time for it. So I'm always reliable to clear out my emails throughout the week, but typically that would get done on a Saturday morning. And this week and the last week, I've been doing it on Friday, very committedly. And I would typically not do that because I'd get to Friday and be like, party time. The week's over, I can go do some fun stuff. Instead, I'm in the practice of really empowering that. It's having a big effect. So integrity, really, really nice sort of place for us to practice. Let's have a sip of coffee together. We're just on our way to travel to Costa Rica to lead the retreat in the Forge this year. So we're really excited about that. We'll be gone for about 2 weeks. Got some people staying at our house to take care of our dogs. But that's kind of like occupying a lot of mind space. So I've got that on my mind. We'll probably do a podcast episode or 2 on location. I usually like to do that to share what's going on, the work we're doing, how that's unfolding. I had a thought not long ago about how, going down to this retreat, people are like, that must be really cool. You get to do a lot of work with people. And it is, and it's neat. It's cool to get to go to Costa Rica and do retreat work there. Good morning, Monica. It's nice to see you. But the thing about this work is I think a lot of us, myself included, we often think, oh, wow, the work is about cracking other people open. But really the deeper work is about being willing to be cracked open myself, to let how people are showing up, to let this work impact me. And my default is the opposite of that. My default is to stay armored, protected. I'm unimpactable. You can't do anything that would change the way I'm feeling in this moment. I am fully impervious to you. And that's what we settle for a lot of times in leadership and certainly in the world, especially in a world that's having a lot of, like, it's a lot to be with in the world right now. You probably noticed this, politics, climate change denial, whatever, shootings. There's just a lot to protect ourselves from. And that just becomes the way we go through life. And it's certainly the way I learned to go through life. And if I'm showing up unimpactable, impervious, not willing to let anyone make a difference for me, that as a leader creates a clearing. I'm modeling something. And then other people witness that, have the experience, wow, I can't seem to make a difference with Adam. And then they conclude that's the way to be. And then they armor up. And so because in our line of work, we talk about how the leader has to go first and the leader's being creates the clearing, my job going down is to start doing the work and staying in the work to allow myself to be cracked open. And the way that looks is I've got to really bring a lot of this to my coach, notice the ways that I'm staying impervious or safe or impermeable, and allow my team or my leaders or my partner to point out like, hey, you seem a little bit guarded or a little bit, caught up there, and really do a lot of work to set like this as the intention for me going down. So I get a little nervous as we go down because I'm like, I don't want to be cracked open. I don't want that. I want to be cracked open. I want to be safe. I want you to like me. I want you to think I'm cool and good at what I do. And I want to know what the next step is for me all the time, because then I'll be safe. Then I will know that I can get myself through this, whatever happens. The bad part is the only way to have that is to not be cracked open, to stay exactly as I am, because the status quo is the only way to ensure those things. So I have to let go of all that. We have to go down to this retreat and really be willing to have it unfold in front of us. We have a plan and all that, but first and foremost, the way of being we bring is we are going to surrender to what shows up, as opposed to we're going to force a particular agenda. Okay, so that's all the stuff going on over here. I'm going to start talking about possibility, and then we're going to bring our guests on. I'm going to have a sip of this cafe first. Hey, Tara. Tara's agreeing. I don't want to be cracked open. I'm tired. I got shit to do. I don't have time to be cracked open. What is this cracked open nonsense? It's energy. It takes work. The funny thing about being cracked open about transformation is that initially it will require more work, more energy. And when we have this experience of why is this making me even more, I feel drained, I feel even more tired, we then conclude this isn't authentic to me. And the thing about transformational work is at first it will be inauthentic to you, because what is authentic to you is everything you're currently doing and everything about the way you currently relate to yourself. So authenticity is a bit of a troubling term. It can really hold us in check. Hey, David. Okay, so let's talk about possibility, which is what we're here to talk about today. Possibility, in a nutshell, is let's talk about predictability, which is everything you're already reliable to create in your life. And possibility is everything outside of that. The best way I like to think of possibility is imagine you had a year, and in that year, all of the stuff you do that gets in your way, we removed that. that wasn't on the playing field anymore. So you're like, oh, I'm too hard on myself, or oh, I never like lean in courageously to what I want to do. Great. Let's imagine that wasn't there. What would happen then? What would be available? What would you create in that year? What do you imagine you would create in that year? What might you create in that year? I noticed my video is spiraling. Can someone in the comments just let me know if you're still seeing me or if I'm frozen? I think it's my computer rather than global, but I might have to refresh my page. So what would be available if all of that stuff was off the table and you just got to show up from this pure, okay, great, thanks guys, this pure place where there was no concerns, nothing in your way, all of what you knew about yourself that stopped you from creating what you want, that was gone. And then we explore that. And the reason that this is a conversation that coaches are really good at facilitating is because we as humans are actively opposed to possibility. We don't realize that that's what's going on, but the life around us, everything you see in your life is an ongoing perpetual argument for why your life has to look this way. You've had this experience if you've ever tried to do something new and you're like, oh, I just don't have time because my sister called me, or I would totally do that, but I just got busy, or I just didn't think about that because my mind was on X, Y, and Z. These are all, your life has exactly the amount of space in it to allow for everything you currently have and everything you currently don't have. So anytime we're moving into possibility, we're kind of going against the momentum of our life. And so there's a sort of swimming against the current nature to this. And it's very hard for us to craft possibility on our own. Here's the last thing I want to share, and then we'll bring on Maggie and Seth. We can tend to have kind of two default, there's many, but like two big default ways that we approach this idea of possibility. One is that we're all in the dreams. We're like, someone asks you what you want, you're like, I want to be president of the United States, and I want to create clean drinking water in Africa, and I want to do this, and I want to do this. So you're able to vision, you can see like this big broad thing, but then as we try to bring you down to get your feet on the ground and come up with like, great, so what are the steps towards that? It scatters very quickly. So kind of like all dreams, no logistics, no tactics, no implementation. And then the other side of the equation can often be all tactical, no dreams. This would be where I kind of hang out. So I know all of the stuff I'm supposed to do. I can see all of the steps from here, but there's no real grand vision. And it's all sort of like, from here, where could I get to next? And then next, and then next, and so on. So what we're going to do today, once we bring on Seth and Maggie, is Seth is going to be leading Maggie through this conversation. And then I'm going to be giving Seth some support to help him like broaden out what he's doing. And the reason that we're in this conversation today is because Seth is in the forge with us, and he said, I want some support with this conversation. I said, great, come on the live show with me and I'll support you with it. And he said, crap, that sounds scary. Let's do it. So Seth, let's get your camera on, your mic on. Maggie, same. Let's get you guys in here. Oh yeah, what's up?
Hello.
Hello, Maggie.
Hey.
Cool. How are you guys doing?
I need more
Excellent.
than water. I need caffeine.
You need more than water?
Yeah.
You really,
I need caffeine.
you really dropped the ball.
I know.
Cool. Okay. Anything either of you want to share before I kind of hand the reins over to you, Seth?
Yeah. Do you mind if I share a tiny bit about what I was thinking when I asked for support in the Forge?
Not at
I feel
all.
like that might be interesting context.
Uh-huh.
So, as a coach myself, part of my job in creating clients and just in general is to try to open up possibility for people, to have them step into their lives in a way that they wouldn't typically. And I find that I have some hangups around doing that. It can be tough to stand for people for a way of being that they don't normally access. Like there's a lot of comfort in sort of being in conversation with people in the normal things you talk about and stuff like that. I for one always want people to like me, and so sometimes I feel like if I'm going against their current, it may put me out with them a little bit and some things like that. So yeah, I'm really excited today to get to practice standing more for possibility and less kind of just going with the flow, which would be my default.
Great. Cool. Okay. Maggie, anything before we turn it over to Seth? And
I
you?
mean, I could share why I said yes.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Let's hear it.
Seth asked me if I would participate, and Seth, I think you're cool and you're really good at what you do. So we'll just note that on the public record. But also I did a panel and it was called Hello, My Name Is, and I asked Seth to be a panelist and a speaker. And I've known Seth through networking, but it's different when you hear somebody without their elevator pitch, and he was able to passionately talk in a Q&A scenario. And I don't know, I'll be a part of anything you ask me to do, Seth.
Thanks, Maggie. Appreciate it.
Nice. That's fantastic. Okay, so Seth, you've got the reins until the top of the hour. I'm going to interrupt from time to time, offer feedback, training, share what I'm noticing. Maggie, again, just to reiterate, you can completely ignore everything I say and just like let Seth support you, and we'll go from there. Sound good, Seth?
Sounds good.
Okay, I turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, Maggie, again, thank you very much for joining me today. As I kind of gave you some knowledge of earlier, today's goal is to explore your possibility. So to take a look at maybe what you'd want to create this year. And in particular, if we can manage something you could create in this year that wouldn't be the normal way that it goes, something that's kind of outside of the default. I wonder if we want to start by maybe you just sharing a little bit for as to what you see for yourself this year, what you're thinking about creating.
So one of my great friends asked me or challenged me to think of a word for the year. And I don't mind gimmicky things like that. And maybe people don't think it's gimmicky, but I kind of do. And I don't mind doing that because I like a train of thought. And my word for the year has been set as momentum.
Mm.
And when I thought about it, I didn't really want to leave it just as momentum because that could be momentum to anywhere. So my word for last year was intentional. And so now I'm going to just claim 2 words for the year: intentional momentum. And where I'm hoping that brings me, and I am definitely more of default 2, as Adam was describing, where I'm more tactical than big picture, and I try to be more big picture. So I'm thinking in steps of where I want to go and what I want to do for 2025. And I did write out my 1-year goals. And one of the things is to host my own podcast. The goal behind that would be to build relationships with referral partners. So that's job wise. Personal goals in my family, as far as, I don't know if it's even considered in the realm of possibility. It's just things that I think of that I want to get done. So I'm really excited to delve into like the other side of that, the less tactical side of that. But my child will be going to college after next year. So really dialing that in and getting her to where she wants to be. And my other child obviously will still be at home. So we're working on some things because she's in middle school. Middle school is hard. Yeah. So, I mean, really, I'm like very much on the tactical side and the what is the next step. And I can think of 12 next steps ahead. And even if I set a goal of like 1 through 10, 10 being I met it, I would develop an 11 and a 12. So that's kind of where I am for 2025.
Yeah, super clear. Thanks for sharing all that. I'm kind of wondering then, for the sake of this conversation, if we sweep tactics off the table for a second and we just kind of look at the end of the year, like, what would you really love to create if like building and getting there wasn't even a part of the puzzle? Like, what would you create if you could magic it into place?
I think I would have a seamless recurring podcast. Not thinking about the tactical things is really, really hard for me. I would be averaging 8 million a month in business. Even 4 million a month is a great living, but that would allow me to pay for college the way I want to. I'm hoping that she gets all the scholarships in the whole universe, but you know, if she doesn't, I would be in a relationship. I would maintain my, 2 or 3 really great friends that I have and friendships and develop those and go deeper with people. Another part of possibility would be to actually be really transparent and connected to people, because I feel like I have a lot of people in my space, but not very many that I'm truly connected to. Does that answer your question? Do we want more?
Yeah, that was an awesome start. You were
Okay.
inspiring me and blowing me away. Um, would it feel right to maybe explore one of those a little bit, just to see like what it would look like and make it a little more real?
Mhm.
What would you pick as like your favorite or the thing that really seemed to catch fire for you when you were talking?
Right now, because of where I am, I think in my life and how old my kids are. I mean, it's hard I don't want my entire life, obviously, to revolve around my kids, but the majority of it does right now. So if I could feel more financially free, which in turn creates peace for me, that would be the number one focus. And that can happen in multiple ways, but creating or having higher production in my business is one good one.
Mm, gotcha. Yeah, I'm curious a little bit like how it's where my mind goes is like how it's going now, because it sounds like there's something that you have as a vision of like financially free.
Mhm.
Um, and that sounded like the 8 million in business per month, if I had that right. Um, how's it kind of going now? Like where are you right now?
I'm part of a little small mastermind group, and we were going over our life wheel, and we had to rate from 1 to 10. I'm sure lots of people have done that before, all the different sections of our lives. And financially, I made it pretty much like a 6 out of 10, I think I picked, because right now, if I made the same amount of money every year as I made last year, I'd be okay. But that doesn't always translate into peace in my mind, because what if there are 4 months where I don't get another loan, or whatever the case may be? I don't know what the exact number of months would be that would throw it all off, but there's always the what if that doesn't happen. And I feel like if I sustained, um, let's just say $8 million a month for a certain amount of time, I'd have 2 or 3 years of reserves. So if I did have a dry spell of however long, I'd be okay. So I think that's kind
Mm,
of how I define feeling financially free and therefore peaceful, which is like my number one motivator, is feeling peaceful.
yeah, gotcha. So it sounds, I'm hearing that it's like right now the amount of income is pretty solid, but it's not to the point where there's like this sense of like peace and stability into the long run. It's like this could fall away or something like that.
Yeah.
Mm. I'm curious what it would look like if you achieved your financial goals. Like if we teleported you in a time machine to the end of this year and you were hitting 8 million a month, maybe for the last 3 months or whatever it was. What would that open up for you?
I think if as soon as I was maintaining that, I would hire to where they could do functions that would give me time back. So if I got to that point, then I would hire people that could do functions that I don't necessarily need to be part of. Um, and that actually is another sticking point for me a little bit, just because in my industry, I've literally filled every single position in this industry. So it's hard for me to let go of functions that I don't necessarily need to spend time doing because I'm good at them.
Mm,
And it's hard for me to trust other people to do them. So slowly I've been starting to go into that realm, where I now have a processor, which is the person who does all the paperwork on the other side. Once you send somebody out shopping and we get a purchase contract, now it gets handed over and this person's taking care of it. She completely earned my trust, and I don't have to think about, is my loan okay? So that was kind of step one. But I would try to find and hire more people like her so that I could travel. I could have my little piece of land with one tiny house for me and one tiny house that I Airbnb and then my kids can live in when they come back from college.
mm,
Um, and I would just have the freedom to do any or none of those things, but it would be my choice.
yeah, gotcha. So I hear like there's travel, There's your property that you would open up, like your dream property, it sounds like, where you're living there and your kids have a space to come back in. That's beautiful.
Hmm. I think also being able to provide like my kids' first house or even just assistance to get it is another thing that I would like.
Yeah.
And I am currently a big part of my mom's retirement plan and, you know, the rest of her life. So it would be awesome to know for a fact, which I believe that everything will be fine, but to know that even she could go travel or she could, you know, whatever she wants to do for the other 30 years that she has left or whatever the case might be, not to get morbid.
Yeah. Um, my thought then is like, what's the thing that's kind of in the way of getting this started? It feels like your dream is pretty clear for what you would create with this, and we know how it's going now. What's the thing that would have to be moved in order for you to be able to create this?
So Maggie, I'm gonna jump in here. You're doing awesome, as are you, Seth. So
But
really
not you,
great work
Seth.
so far. What's that?
I
But
said,
not
but
you,
not
Seth.
you, Seth.
You're doing awesome too, Seth. Sort of fine. It's whatever. So, um, how's this going so far for you?
Hmm. It feels pretty good. I feel like we've gotten some cool vision out on the table. You jumped in at a good spot because I was kind of like, I don't really know where to take it from here, was a little bit of what I had in the back of my head.
Got it. Okay, great. And what are you present to just in like Maggie's being, like part of the essence of who she is, what she brings into the space?
Mm. Um, she's very, very grounded. There's like a certainty to her, like and a power. Like
Uh-huh.
I sense that she could kind of create whatever she wants to once she sets towards it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's a love for people that was really coming through with like what she wanted to create with the money. It was a lot of like helping people in my life that I really care about build something bigger. So like a sense of like opening possibility for others.
Yeah, she's like walking contribution, isn't she?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So cool that part of what you do, Maggie, is like support people to get into houses. You know,
Mhm.
like one of the biggest, you know, such an important part of our lives. It's a perfect fit. Okay, great. So yeah, I'm present to those things too, Seth, as well. And like I'm also present to like Maggie really like allowing herself to vision and to dream. And you're doing a good job sort of acknowledging that, letting her know she's doing great. But it bears like repeating for everyone listening as well. Like you're already kind of doing this, but it's really we don't realize how much it takes to vision beyond what we can currently see how to create. We take that for granted, coaches especially, because that's the world we live in. And so I really want to emphasize for all of us when we're supporting someone to like play in possibility, it's really, really important to acknowledge the work because it is work. It requires some energy to get out beyond the status quo. So there's that. Um, what's the part that Maggie, like, are there any recurring themes you're noticing in what she's shared?
Hmm. Um, the theme of being within the goal of helping people was something. Do you mean like ways of being, or I guess I'm not super clear on what you're asking there.
Whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
um I noticed that she's well thought out once we kind of got to this.
Mhm.
There was very much of a like um I've sort of looked here, and I've done work in the past to kind of like open this up for myself. Is something I
Like
noticed.
she's kind of has a sense of what there is to do and all that.
Yeah.
Are there any parts she's shared where you might have a hunch or even just an experience where that doesn't feel so like obvious or easy for her to sort of make happen, grasp, whatever?
Hmm. Some of the stuff that she mentioned around being able to maybe release, like to bring in other people to support and be able to release to them.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, so maybe that's like a theme is like of the I I'm doing all this and a lot of it's me or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. How about peace? Did you hear that word a few
Yes.
times? Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's the overall goal.
Mm-hmm. So there's there's the what someone wants to create in the foreground, the tangible results, right? And then there's the background, the ontological or the experience they want as they create those results. So you and I, probably even Maggie, already know she's reliable to create like results. She could go out and like raise her business, etc. But the thing that would still be missing would be that sense of peace, right? She's mentioned that two, maybe three times. I've heard that keeps coming up.
Mm.
Which, like, do you have a sense of what I'm talking about? How like the results might be kind of accessible, but that sense of peace might be a little more elusive.
Yeah, totally. It's like maybe how do we bring those two things so that they can live at the same time or something like that.
Hmm. And which of these two would you say you've been exploring more?
Mm. Less so the piece and more so the result.
Uh-huh. Right. Yeah. Like one of the questions you asked was sort of like, okay, well, let's imagine you created that financial freedom. Right. Now, we could sort of assume, well, the piece is attached to that, but where that conversation kind of went was more into like the logistics of it, what Maggie would get to do with more money or that sort of stuff, but it's still kind of in the foreground conversation.
Mm.
So I'd invite you to explore more the piece part and not how would she get it, because remember, that's not the conversation we're having right now. That's what coaching is for. Coaching supports the how and the creation and all of that. This is a
Mm.
conversation of what if, what would it be like? So I would
Mm.
suggest opening that box up a little bit more with her, because that's going to be more in the realm of possibility as opposed to the results.
Gotcha.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Any questions before I hand you back the reins?
No, that was great. Thanks.
Cool. Okay. I'm here. I will interrupt at some other point, probably.
And so Maggie, we'll pretend you didn't just hear all that, but um yeah, what do you think about like when you think about bringing more peace into your life? What does that open up for you?
Um, I think if I had more peace in my life and also didn't, maybe I allowed myself to share the load with other people, I would be more accessible and be able to have those deeper relationships
Mm.
with my friends and my kids. I mean, I like to think that my relationship with my kids is as deep as it can be, but probably not. I think there's probably deeper levels to relationships that you want to go deeper with in infinitely. Um, but I think I get so tunnel visioned on the things I have to do because I have people relying on me
Mm.
that I don't always keep my piece in the forefront. I do to a degree in which, like, if somebody, let's just say, doesn't, I can feel that the energy doesn't work with mine. I, in almost a scary manner, can just be like, okay, bye. Like, and cut it off, and that's it. Same with situations, same with functions that I'm doing. I've gotten really good at just not doing those things. I'll figure out a different way to either do those things or get rid of that human in my life or whatever the case may be.
Mm.
Um, and I actually really feel this might be off topic, but it might be relevant. I guess you'll tell me. I feel like I'm in this trial about my ego right now. And it's been like showing up in different ways. So whether that's a person choosing not to utilize me for business or choosing to act differently than I would have expected them to. Um, seemingly wrong me or whatever the case. That doesn't always happen, but it's been like this unrest time right now while I'm seemingly riding this momentum wave. So I'm going in the direction tactically and logistically that I need to go, I think, to achieve these things.
Mm.
But to your point earlier, I don't know that I'm achieving peace at this time, even though it
Mm.
is my main goal. I'm doing things as they come up to protect it, but expanding it and making that the way that I am is still a little bit elusive.
Mm. Beautiful introspection. That was awesome work. I really hear, and I can even resonate to an extent with the like, this potential thing that I could step into is going to threaten my peace, and so I don't really know if I want that right now. Is that kind of your sense of that piece of it?
Yeah, and then I remain super risk adverse and I take smaller steps than I probably could.
Mm, yeah, beautiful. Um, and then you also sort of brought up this other piece of it, which is like, um, there's a bit of an ego thing where it's like, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it's the sense of it, I guess, is that when people are choosing out of ways that you would see to do it, or maybe they're like choosing to use somebody else, that disrupts the piece. Is that kind of the sense of it? Like that's to
Yeah,
keep it in the theme, or is it its separate thing?
to keep it in the theme, yes, it does, because to me, peace and being chosen sometimes go together, like 90% of the time.
Mm,
And so and I don't necessarily, like, if I get given a referral or whatever, I don't usually have people not choose to work with me. But let's just say, I'm working with a referral partner realtor and they choose to have, multiple options, which they're required to have a few, but I don't get just automatically first crack at something or whatever. That can feel like a major bruise to my ego. And that definitely disrupts my peace because my brain goes to why would you not? I don't understand. I know that I can do the best job. I can, communicate the whatever the stuff is. And so that's why I say those two things are probably interconnected. But I think it also has to do with trying new things, taking bigger steps, because I may not do it the way that I envision it, or it ends up differently, or I look stupid, or whatever.
mm, yeah.
And
Again, awesome introspection. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and then I ruminate on it. So
Mm. So then it affects your peace even in the like your mind is unsettled around it kind of
mhm.
thing. Mm.
I'll
Yeah.
come up with a narrative, that's for sure.
Mm. Yeah, so that was I sense that that was a really good way to kind of draw out how this thing is kind of getting in your way. Like a lot of the spaces where it's like it's sort of like if I had peace then I could get rid of all this stuff. I'm kind of curious to explore on the other side, like we got a little bit into with a sense of peace, we could go deeper in relationships,
Mhm.
potentially. Do you see anything else that it would open up for you if you could stay more in peace?
Yeah, I think that I would just be more apt to just go for whatever and not have to measure as much. And I don't mean like haphazardly throw myself out to whatever I happen to have a whim about. Because I can be a little bit impulsive, but and so I don't mean in that way. I just mean being like, I've it's decently measured and let's go for it. I
Mm,
feel like I would be more apt to do that if I had more peace.
yeah. And what would you create if you had access to that?
It's hard to envision past what I've said.
Mm,
It's hard
yeah,
to
thanks for saying
envision.
so.
Yeah, because I don't know what more I would necessarily want. And
Mm,
sometimes I wonder if I've been like conditioned to not want more. Maybe.
mm,
I don't know.
mm. Yeah, great catch. Um, do you feel like it would serve you to explore that at all, or do you feel fine kind of leaving that where it is?
No, I would rather explore it because sometimes I think of like what would I tell a friend if I was having this conversation with them? And it's always easier for me to think of things for them than it is to think of things for me,
Mm,
even in the realm of possibility.
yeah.
Which is probably why coaching is so important.
Mm,
Because coming up with my own, I feel like, well, this is good enough. And I would like to have more, and I think I will get there. Um, but if I was talking to somebody else from a perspective and they're saying I'm having a hard time thinking of, I would be like, well, what about this? And you could think of this, and it's just easier. So
mm,
I don't know how I can maybe get outside myself a little bit more to see from a bird's eye view the things I could do like I would for a friend.
yeah. Um, there's probably no right way to do it. My thought would be to kind of do that thing where it's sort of we clear everything off, and it's kind of like if you could create anything, what would you create? But if that feels too big, does that feel kind of big? That was sort of my sense of it.
Mhm.
Um, maybe we start by just kind of like pulling on a string, like um, what's something that sets you on fire that you'd like to have in your life, or just like the word passion comes to mind. Like what's your passion look like?
Let me
I think
pause for a
one,
moment. I'm just going to
yeah.
pause you, Maggie.
Mm,
So you guys are both doing awesome. Um, I'm really present to your generosity, Maggie, and your sharing and just, playing full out. So thanks a lot for that. So Seth, where would you say, like, where do you find yourself in this conversation?
mm.
I was meant to, I'm intended to say in this conversation, but I intonated it weird. So now that's the end of the sentence.
Um, I notice a little bit that I'm trying to get it right,
Mm-hmm. Nice.
um, which might be stepping in a little bit. Um, I am trying to make this space safe, because I understand that this is kind of a new area to play in, and I to like go behind the curtains for a second. I know that's something that I do a lot is I'll kind of make it safe. So I'm wondering if um, I guess what I'm trying to do is get it right now that I talk to you. So maybe I'll just sort of end it there and see where we go.
How are you, so that's what you're trying to do, or that's sort of like a little bit what's going on there. What is your sense of like where there is to go with Maggie? If you didn't have to get it right, if, whatever.
Mm, yeah. I think to like practice a little bit um of taking a look at like what even going through the motions of like
Oh, your mic cut out there. You still there? We can't hear you. Keep saying words though. Keep talking. It's amusing for us. For those on the audio, he's just getting his headset in here.
Sorry, technical difficulties. Can you hear me?
Welcome back. Yep, you're
Yeah.
here.
Okay. Um, yeah, my sense is like maybe to practice a little bit of like stepping into that space where she doesn't usually go. Like
Mm-hmm.
what do I want?
Cool. Yeah, that could definitely serve. Here's the thing I want to illuminate is, so Maggie said, like, I'm not really sure. It's hard for me to put myself there, right?
Hmm.
That's the sound of being on the threshold of possibility.
Hmm.
So if we already knew what it looked like, if it was readily accessible for our brains, it wouldn't be possibility. It would be more of the world we already know.
Gotcha.
And this conversation is frankly sometimes kind of frustrating because it's outside of what we already know. So the first thing I like to do once we hear that is really celebrate the person. Hell yeah, we're on the threshold. That's how we know, is that you don't know. And then what we as humans do from I don't know is like try to figure out a way to get the right answer, more or less. So like maybe Seth, you could guide me towards what the right answer is, or maybe we could, you were starting to like pull threads about what Maggie's passionate about. And the thing I would like to see you do is stand a little bit more for the possibility in this conversation that it's okay not to know and she can still play. Does that, I know I put in some extra words there. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
It does. It just then brings the question of like, so then what do we even do in the conversation?
Yeah. So the first thing you're doing is you're creating a context for Maggie to step into, which is, yeah, you probably don't know. So you might have to just take some swings. You might even get it wrong, but that's how you're going to start to discover this. So that's the first thing. You're creating a context in which for her to play.
Gotcha.
And then the second thing is we can ask questions like, okay, got it. So just imagine for a minute that piece you desire so much is there. At the end of the year, it's there. You have that piece. How would things be different with your friends? And if that's too big, you can be like, well, what would there be more of? Or you can draw on some of this stuff. You talked about deeper relationships. How would more of that piece in your life affect the depth of your relationships? What would there be less of? What would there be more of? So does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm kind of slotting that in, but I'm seeing, I was trying to take us somewhere, whereas like the thing was probably to just explore more into what we were already doing now that we know this with kind of that coming along with us or something.
That's right. You were kind of like doing a sort of circle around to hope to get there. We want to actually jump right into it and then support from inside of it as opposed to like ease our way in, because there's never a point where exploring I don't know is something other than not knowing.
Yeah.
So the only way to explore it is to kind of jump off the diving board and just be there. And then we can work with a gradient inside of that, as opposed to like trying to make it okay to get in there. And then you'll get to the end of the conversation and that possibility won't actually have been explored.
Gotcha.
We've explored everything around the bounds of it, which Maggie is already expert in. She already knows everything around the boundaries of this. Make sense?
Yes.
Cool. I will hand it back to you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Maggie. So since I didn't take time to celebrate where you got to, great job.
I got further than I thought I would. I'm not gonna lie.
Nice.
Yeah.
And did you, I just want to make sure that you kind of follow that context that Adam was talking about, where it's like, when we play in this space, there's probably going to be like an I don't know. And so some of it might be like not getting it right and just sort of swinging. Did that all make sense? Do you have any questions about any of that, I guess?
No, but one observation and how I felt when he was describing things to say next is what would be different. That's easier for me to understand and answer than what would there be more of. And I think that's really because I feel like that's my ceiling of what my brain thinks of for possibility. So what would be different if I was I felt peaceful. I was like, my finances are handled, mom is set, kids are off to college, we have a plan to get him a house, blah, blah, blah. All that stuff is already done. Answering the question, what would be different, like even in probably all of my relationships, is easier for me than what would there be more of. Or
does that sound like the place to explore then, the more of?
Probably. And maybe, I don't know if I could get there by saying what would be different. It's kind of like what I thought of is when you're trying to describe what you would want in a partner, like a romantic partner, is so much harder than explaining what you wouldn't want, because that is based on what you've already experienced. And explaining what I do want is clearly something I have not, although some things that I have. So I'm like, maybe I take an inventory of the things that have been wonderful in peaceful situations that I would want more of. I don't know.
There may also be something like the things you don't want are mirrors or reflections of what you do want, potentially. So maybe it's kind of the same thing. Like we could almost go either way, but it feels more it feels more comfortable the other way because you've practiced it that way or something.
So I'm going to jump in.
Resonate?
I'm going to jump in.
I agree.
So Seth, you're working with a powerful woman, yes?
Yes.
Great. Okay, we're all agreed on that. Yeah, she kicked my
Very
ass
powerful.
many
No,
different
I'm just
ways.
kidding.
I want to feel more of your power and your stand for her power in the conversation, in the sense that I want to feel you're doing a lot of laying a lot of track, but she doesn't need that.
Yeah.
So let me give you an example of this, where you're sort of like hearing what she said and then saying, like, repeating back what she said. And then so it sounds kind of like, blah, 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 blah. Does that resonate? And then she gets a yes. Instead of that, what I would love to hear you do is say, got it? Okay, so how else would peace affect your relationships? What else would be different? Just go straight back into that conversation and really stand for that being, one, available to Maggie, she can generate it, and moving the conversation forward with a little more momentum. Make sense?
This is a breakthrough for me to do that. So thanks for pointing that out.
Yes, I will send you a bill later. Back to you.
Yeah. Yeah, Maggie. So if you heard where we're going from here, yeah, I'm wondering what would you, if you were accessing more peace, what else would you be getting out of your relationships?
I would completely not have any obligatory relationships at all. I feel like I'm still, because there's still fear in place of where peace could be, as far as having enough or being able to support the people who depend on me, which is obviously a recurring theme. If that wasn't there, then it wouldn't matter if I had for example, a referral partner, which gratefully I don't have any of these right now, but a referral partner that I don't really like working with. But I need deals and they produce, one a month or whatever for me. If I had the peace, whether it's tied to money or not, and I have a thought about that, then I wouldn't have to entertain that. And by removing that relationship, it would just give me more peace. So right now I feel like I get stuck and almost dependent on maintaining relationships with people that I wouldn't if I was fully peaceful about everything.
And what would your job look like if everyone you worked with, you were aligned with, and it was kind of, and the peace was coming?
I feel like if everything was aligned, I would take great happiness or joy or whatever in the fact that, because I feel like it would also affect them. So if we were all aligned, what I picture is that everybody is happy with how it's going. Because when other people aren't happy with how something's going that I'm a part of, that affects me greatly. So when I picture all of it being harmonious and we are all aligned, they're enjoying it as well. They're getting peace from it. They're happy with the results. And so that in turn would feed back into me.
Beautiful.
And I think I can have that if I don't have to have these obligatory relationships.
Yeah. What else could you create? So it sounds like all the people you would be on the same page with everybody you're working with. There'd be a sense of harmony or something. I got, was that kind of does that word make sense?
Definitely.
Or resonate?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what would you guys be able to create with that atmosphere? Like if that thing was running, what would you create then?
I think it kind of reminds me of what I'm doing now, or even from when I started rebuilding here in South Carolina. I really had to do things to create relationships with people so that people would know who I am. And then start working with people, right? And eventually get business and referral relationships. But a lot of the things I was doing, and I have actively pivoted from this, and that's why intentionality was my word last year and why it's remaining my word now, because I can do a lot of different things, but they don't all come back to my focus and what I need to do to get to where I want to go. So, for example, I don't even know how many events I had last year. a ton, and they were wonderful. And I've met a bunch of amazing people, including through networking and all of that, which I'm super grateful for. But I think if I had more specific and intentional relationships, it's not necessarily a waste of time to do these other things, but if everybody was in harmony and we were all flowing and we were making the money that we needed to make and closing the deals and enjoying each other, then we can do these fun things that really are just fun. It's not like I'm doing it and I tried to get something out of it, but it's not what it's really meant for. And it wouldn't have to be a learning situation that, okay, well, that event is not actually aligned to business, for example. So I think if everything was in harmony and the other things we would be able to do, to get back to your actual question, because I kind of wandered there a little bit, is we would be able to do those extra things, but we would still be very much reaching the goals that we're all trying to reach together.
Yeah. So I hear like there'd be much more of a sense of fun about all of it, and you guys would really feel aligned about everything you're creating. Is that the sense of it? Nice. Would it make sense to explore one of your other areas now?
Sure.
To see what we could create there. What's the next one that you want to touch on? So besides the business and the money you want to create, what's like the next one you'd look at?
I don't know. I guess interpersonal relationships. But I don't really know where to go with that. I don't keep people around for very long that I don't feel like they match anyway. I don't necessarily feel like I need more. So I'm not sure where to go with possibility around those. And I don't really want to talk about romantic relationship.
Yeah. Heard. If we brought peace to your relationships, given that that's sort of been the theme, do you see anything there?
Anything that would be different?
Yeah, like what could you build or what could you create in your relationships with a sense of peace?
If I had a sense of peace, because I'm trying to think of what happens when I don't. And I believe that I would ruminate less, which would would reduce the amount of just constant scenarios that are happening in my mind around friendships and referral relationships or whatever. And they're not always bad. It's just ongoing. I would love for that to quiet so that I'm showing up even more authentically, and I'm also able to see them more authentically.
Yeah. And what would that open up in your relationship with them?
Probably letting them in more and also allowing more things to affect me so that I can grow further instead of just staying in my comfortable place and growing tiny pieces at a time. Although, like I said, I feel like I'm in the gauntlet right now for whatever reason around ego. And maybe that's just how it happens for me. But I think that if, peace was greater in my life, I would feel more comfortable and open to growth because there'd be peace around it.
Yeah. So I hear growing in the relationships. Is there anything you would create with that? Like, so you're growing in your relationships, you're deepening with these people. What's kind of what would that make available?
I guess the opportunity for me to learn more about myself. It's really interesting because I'm an only child. And so I spent a lot of time by myself. But I was always in like survival mode from birth. And it would be really nice to be out of that and more in growth than in survival. Because I feel like I keep my walls up and I stay in my predictable space. because I feel the pressure of, the other things, the other people, whether they put it on me or not, I just do.
Nice catch.
And I would really love to operate less in survival mode and more in growth, entrepreneurial, and not necessarily, like I said, money isn't necessarily the hugest motivator for me. It is what I would be able to do with it. So if I achieved that and I had my piece, as far as friends, I think just going deeper and mutually giving and getting more from them.
Mm.
I'm going to jump in here, Seth, just so that
Sure.
I can hold the container of our time too. So
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
one final piece on what Maggie just shared, and then I want to give you an opportunity to acknowledge her, Seth, and then we'll go to a debrief. So, did you notice, there's sort of like, anytime we're in a conversation like this, people will often share sort of like, here's how things are, or why things are the way they are, or how things are. And then there's like a little bit about what they would want.
Mhm.
Did you catch that in Maggie sharing there?
Yeah.
Right. And it's not to diminish any of it. It's all valuable, and there's a time and place. Like the only child stuff, very interesting, relatable too, even though I have a brother, could see myself in a lot of what she was sharing. But what we want to do, and I haven't given you a chance to say anything else, so like you may have already been doing this, but we want to, especially in a conversation like this, kind of distinguish, okay, that's the part of the conversation that might be for another time. Here's the part that I heard. She said she could grow more in relationships. And you want to take that and springboard onto the next thing. Tell me what it would be like for you to grow more in relationships, and ask questions similar to what you're asking. You're asking really, really good questions like, what would become available? That's a great possibility question. If you had that, then what? So we're being like this annoying child in this conversation. And then what? And then what? And then what? But we're also being a very sophisticated coach who's listening for the part that evokes possibility, and focusing the attention there. So, whoops, take that, Mike, so that we can broaden that out. Make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Would you like to acknowledge Maggie by way of closing down this part of the conversation?
Oh, I would love to. Maggie, is it okay if I give you an acknowledgement? Maggie, I really want to acknowledge you for your power. You are so powerful. It's like, I feel like you could just move mountains. It just kind of radiates off of you. So it's very impressive, inspiring. It gets me thinking about my own power when I watch you just dive in like that. I also really want to acknowledge you for your caring and your generosity that you are for other people, and how almost all the things we explored, it wasn't just you. It was like both what you want and what you see to create for all the people that are in your life. It's just a really, it speaks to your leadership. That's the thing that I see, is it's like the power and the caring and all that you bring. Just, there's a sense of trust, and you're just always going to do, not always, but you do the right thing for people, and they can trust in that. And so I'm sure all the people in your life get to reap the benefits of that. So thanks for bringing that to the world.
I hope so.
No, you misheard him. He said that's what you are.
Oh,
Yeah.
Don't
thanks.
have to hope about it at all. And you can trust Seth. He's a total reptile. He wouldn't say anything that he didn't really feel.
Well, I also just wanted to add that this was really hard,
Mhm.
and you did bring me to more of an open mind than I thought I was going to be able to achieve. And I'm proud of you for doing this, because this would be really hard. Like, you're just on public air taking advice, and you're a coach and you're being coached, and it just, I don't know, it just speaks to it speaks to how much you care about what you do, and that comes through from you. I did feel like it was a safe space, so I just want you to know that.
Thanks a lot, Maggie. I really feel that.
So that's a good segue. So the first question I have is, Maggie, like, what are you present to? Now that we're here, just looking back over the conversation, or even just bathing, kind of soaking it in, what are you present to in this moment?
I feel like I definitely want to explore more about it. I realize how closed off I probably am because I'm in the survival mode. I felt uncomfortable at times, not because of either view, just because it's an uncomfortable thing, not having the answer. I don't like
Yes.
it at all. But it's okay not to, is what I learned. And it makes me motivated, and also opens up the possibility of there being possibilities.
Yeah, well said. Yeah. You, Seth, did you notice there was points as Maggie was speaking where she started to light up or get more excited, or like you could see like almost inspiration in her eyes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when we
Mm-hmm.
got into the actual possibility, it was like,
Yeah.
whew.
It's so funny for me because, you know, Seth, you know my wife, Maggie, you don't, but she's also a phenomenal coach. And that woman's like walking possibility. You know, her Mecca is Disney World because it's a land of possibility that a man created because he just decided, why can't adults also enjoy the parks and blah, 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 blah. And for me, that's not at all my relationship to possibility. It has been a bumpy road, and I'm much more like Maggie, and I'm resistant to it. And so every time I get into these conversations, I'm like, ugh, we got to do a stupid possibility conversation. That's where I start from. And I have to do work to like set that story aside and be with the client. And every time as I explore this with someone, it's that you can feel it over there and it starts to light things up. And it's just like, wow, now we are actually exploring what's really available. So that's something I just invite you, Seth, to not only like look for, but like seek to dip yourself in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like aim to drop yourself in. And I want to share something that Rodney said in the chat. Um, so our friend David Medina asked at one point, Adam, what questions would you ask here? And I said my answer was I'd probably ask similar questions to what you're doing, Seth, which is a fine answer. But Rodney had a much better answer, and he said, I don't know what Adam would say, but my sense is it's not about the questions that Seth asks. It's about you dropping into the possibility that Maggie's creating. So as she's drawing this picture for herself, your job's to kind of situate yourself in it and be like, hell yeah, deeper, more growth in your relationships, and then just bring your curiosity. What would that be like? What would there be more of, less of? How would it become, what would become available? What would fall away? You know, there's no right question. We're just exploring the vision that our client or whoever in the moment is creating and opening up. Mm-hmm. Anything either of you wants to share about that experience? Any questions, Seth, you might have about any of that, or possibly you, Maggie? Anything at all?
Something I noticed in that last share is whenever I slipped back into trying to get it right and less about like being there with her in the possibility and seeing it, I would kind of sense like the distance come in. Maybe distance is the wrong word, but it's like I wasn't as fully plugged in as I wanted to be. So that's excellent. That's something to look for every time, I think.
Mm-hmm. Started to get a little tactical, and also kind of like same old song. Like even Maggie, your being started to become like it's a known path, what you're describing, as opposed to being in the discomfort of the unknown. Oh, and
Yeah.
that's something else I want to really thank you, Maggie, for sharing. This is uncomfortable. And we don't realize it just seems like, yeah, just vision, you know, possibility sounds great. But there is a like energetic kind of discomfort because we are pushing into the unknown, and the unknown by very definition is uncomfortable. Otherwise, that's where we would hang out, and we wouldn't hang out in the known. And that's not what we do. We like to know how shit's going to go down because then we can have what we believe that will provide us.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Other questions, thoughts, things you want to share about your experience?
I just wanted to thank Seth for trusting me to do this with you. I tried to be as open as I could be for that reason, because I think it's an honor. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for choosing Maggie, Seth, and inviting her. And Maggie, thanks so much for being here and like really, you know, I acknowledge you for the vulnerability and the trust. You know, it's not you got to be a little bit of a lunatic to come onto a conversation like this. Yeah, totally. Yeah, most people, in all honesty, we the human condition is we arrange our lives to not have to be in a conversation like this, because then we'd have certainty, and then we know that we will be fine, and then you know everything will work out exactly as it's meant to, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
I have one last thing to share, just something I
Please.
took away for myself. I started doing that actually a little bit this week in some of my own explorations, but the energy in the conversation when you're in possibility and when you're not, when you're looking for it, it's so palpable. And
Yes.
that makes it kind of an easier guide if you can sort of try to like pick up on that as you go. I'm learning that more and more. But yeah, thanks for highlighting that.
So true. For me, the part that had me, that default I was sharing, how I'm like, possibility, it's because what I learned to do was logistically ask the right questions without any of the being behind it. And then we're in a boring conversation because we're just talking about like, I don't know, I guess I want to 10x my life and I want it to look like blah, 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 and then we're both bored. And when we check back into the being and push out past the realm of what's comfortable, it resources us. It's an energy high. We start to be like, oh yeah, this is cool. I'm riding this way. So that's really a good thing to, if you're anything like me, to keep an eye out for, and possibly you, Seth, like, hey, how do I feel in this conversation? Am I bored or am I excited? And if I'm bored, maybe we're not actually exploring possibility and there's a deeper place to go. Anything else, Seth, before I give you kind of a summary of some of the feedback I've got, just so you can have it kind of handled?
Yeah, no, that really resonated, that last piece you said. And Maggie, one more thing I'll say to you, just as like a kind of one last acknowledgement. I was so excited to have you on here because you are freaking brilliant and I love working with you, and your mind is just like everywhere and it's awesome. So thanks for taking that journey with me.
She's in the multiverse.
Yeah.
Mortgages in the multiverse.
Yes.
So Seth, broad brushstrokes would be look for the part that is possibility, as opposed to the conversation about like what is or why things are the way they are or how they're not. Those are all fine. They can lead us towards that thing, but just always be standing for the possibility part of the conversation and then ask questions from that place. So that's the first biggest thing. Second thing is to like bring more strength, power, intentionality, like really be willing to stand for this idea that everyone can distinguish this for themselves. It might be uncomfortable. They might have some resistance, but we can all do it. And all we really need is someone to stand there with us and say, you can do this. Celebrate us for getting there. Acknowledge that it's tough when we don't know, and then take a swing anyhow. So really stand there. And then the third thing is just to really dip, like Rodney said, drop into the possibility your client's creating and let your curiosity guide you. And the cool thing about that is this then becomes, I don't know if I'll say easy, but it becomes simple. Because we don't have to figure anything out. We don't have to know the answers. We just have to be willing to kind of not know and then be like, I wonder what. I wonder how this would. Oh, interesting. I'm curious about that.
Mm-hmm. All three of those resonate very strongly. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I really acknowledge you, Seth, for your courage, your willingness to come on this conversation and be vulnerable and to practice. And it's sheer lunacy. And I want to share, I get a lot of people, I don't know, I got added to some lists. So every day there's some new person that I've got to have as a guest on this show. And oh my God, they're going to teach the world how to be inspired. And none of them are willing to do what you two are willing to do, which requires way more courage, not to talk about vulnerability, but to actually practice being vulnerable in the moment. So thank you, Seth, for coming. Thank you for inviting Maggie. Thank you, Maggie, for being here. Okay. Plugs. So let's go with you first, Maggie. If people want to know more about what you do, if they're like, damn, I love what she's creating as a vision, how do I find out more about her stuff? Whatever it happens to be, where do they go to do that?
So I Mortgages by Maggie on all the socials.
Okay. I'm going to type that out as you're talking.
And I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and then those are links to anything else that you might need. Anybody that knows anybody who's thinking about buying a house or refinancing, I'm your girl. And my company can do business in 48 states. I'm personally licensed in 5 or 6. So
which are the states that you got kicked out of?
I believe you have to have brick and mortar in Alaska and Hawaii. Okay, that was going to be my guess. And I volunteered as tribute to go set up Hawaii, but I haven't received the check for moving expenses yet. So
unbelievable.
We're still waiting.
That's super cool. Awesome. And how about you, Seth?
Yeah, so basically my name is unique. So if you Google me, you'll find me. I have LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I love talking ontology, coaching, transformation, all this stuff. So if you'd like to have a conversation with me, please reach out. I'd love to chat.
Awesome. Do you have a website specific for yourself?
No, not yet.
Okay, just Google Seth Drugatz.
And you'll find
Drugatz.
me.
Yeah, cool.
I'm too easy to find. It's a little scary.
It's great. Yeah, same here. There's like one other Adam Quiney in the world, and I'm crushing that guy. Let's see. To finish up over here, I'll share. If you enjoyed this kind of conversation, if you like the sort of approach we have to like feedback, training, this kind of stuff, Seth is in the Forge with us this year. Come join us in the Forge next year. So this is the kind of leadership and coaching work that we do, is supporting people to be in these kind of conversations that are outside of our default human paradigm. So you can learn more about that right there. I'll put that in the comments. If you're listening to the podcast after the fact, you've heard me say the location of this website a billion times. So just go find it. And everyone, I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Hope you enjoyed this conversation. And if you are someone who's maybe working with us or even not, but would like to get some training on something live in the moment, I would love to hear from you. And also convince all the other people that are reaching out to me that that's what they should do instead of whatever they're trying to get on the podcast to do. Thanks, everyone.
The Forge real quick.
Yeah, please. I'd love that, Seth.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I'm in the Forge this year, and it is revolutionizing the way that I'm approaching coaching. It's just in the past, how long have we been working? 5 months, something like that. About 5 months. I have come so far. My clients are giving me feedback that it's like the power that we're generating out of the conversations is just like we're getting to the source of what's there much more quickly. We're making big shifts in how they show up in the world. Can't recommend it more. It's amazing. So thanks, Adam, for putting that on for us.
And then we'll get to see each other in Costa Rica in like a very short little while.
Can't wait.
Cool. Okay, thanks, everyone. I'm going to end the live stream here. Have a great weekend. Bye, y'all.